And we are live. Hit the theme song. There we go. Greetings, mortals, peers, and queers, to another episode of our late Night Serotonin, our weekly Monday show where me and a couple of other content creators will collaborate to talk about the events over the past week, talk about issues we want to go in more in depth on, and for this week, voting. Voting ends tomorrow, folks. Make a plan and go vote. It's extremely important. Our democracy is at stake. And with that, I will end the theme music and give my guests a chance to introduce themselves. Give us your
Hey everybody.
pronouns.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. Hey everybody, I'm Astr0feminist. I'm primarily on TikTok. That is Astro with a 0, feminist. And I primarily just talk about capitalism, the patriarchy, and how it affects women. And this is basically my experience as a woman in the patriarchy. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and check it out.
All right, awesome. And to get onto it, voting ends tomorrow. It is extremely important that you vote, whether it's early voting, although it's getting a little late at night to do any mail-in ballots, and tomorrow. Please don't just choose national candidates like senators and governors. Choose also local candidates, state senators, state representatives, and county heads, sheriffs. A lot of these are going to be up, and it's going to depend heavily on where you live. It's going to be highly localized. I know a lot of people do not vote during the midterms, but it is extremely important that you vote during the midterms, especially these midterms with the Republicans clawing at power as much as they have been. They attempted a coup on January 6th. They tried to overthrow our democracy, and ever since they failed, ever since that they were not able to do it that one time, they have been setting the stage to do it again. A lot of Secretary of State positions and gubernatorial positions are being run for by right-wing MAGA conservative Republicans who are explicitly going to try and overturn the election. They have lied about the 2020 election, voter fraud misinformation, and conspiracy theories are extremely high because of these people. They are propagating conspiracy theories for their own benefit. We had that story that I reported on just last week, where Dan Crenshaw came out and admitted that a lot of Republicans behind the scenes fully admit that their 2020 election conspiracy bullshits were lies that were just there to grab at power, but they don't care. And it doesn't really... the fact that they're lying doesn't really change the fact that they're dangerous, and that these lies are dangerous, and that they put us, the voters, and specifically me, a trans person, at risk. Because if the Republicans take power, you think they're going to let go of it? You think that after the last 2 years that they've been bitching and moaning and writing whole conspiracy theories about how they were the last election that was stolen from them, even though they lost by 10 million votes? You think that they're going to give up power if they take back the House again? They're going to dissolve the January 6th committee. That's just going to disappear. And they're absolutely going to do everything in their power to make sure that they never lose power again. We have the was it Moore v. Harper, that case set to be heard by the Supreme Court, which might enforce the independent state legislator doctrine, which would basically eliminate any and all checks and balances on state electors from voting with the will of the people. Instead, it would go with the will of the legislature, no matter how racist or anti-democratic their redistricting might be. So gerrymandering, we can expect to become significantly worse if that case goes through. I know a lot of leftists do not wholly agree with voting, and to that I say, tough shit. We have lives on the line. We have our democracy on the line. You may not like the Democratic Party. You may not like the candidates in your area. Choose the lesser evil, because it took 4 years of Trump to get 3 Supreme Court justices through. 3 Supreme Court justices, far-right, radical judges who have stripped us of Roe v. Wade, who have gutted the EPA, and are on the verge of taking away our entire democracy and turning us into a one-party state. That is the consequences of Republicans getting power for 1 fucking term. You want that to happen again? Or, if they get their way, in perpetuity? Do not make the mistake of our communist and socialist comrades in the Weimar Republic, who thought that the rise of Hitler would set the stage for a communist revolution that would accelerate the material conditions. It did not. They were first on the chopping block. Well, close. They were second on the chopping block. Trans people, queer people, disabled people, people of color, and Jews came first. But they did take out the socialists. There was no socialist revolution in Germany. Do not make the same mistake twice. We may not like the Democratic Party. I don't like the Democratic Party. They are consistently doing half measures or not enough or trying to make amends with the Republican Party. But you know what? The Democratic Party isn't anti-democratic. The Democratic Party isn't dissolving into active militant fascism. The Republican conspiracy theories, the great conspiracy machine, churned out a stochastic terror. We had an attempted assassination on the Speaker of the House, third in line to the presidency. And Republicans don't care. They fostered the conditions for that. And while in the most explicit terms they say they disavow, they are doing what has been dubbed dodging the conclusion. They will walk you all the way up to the edge of their conclusion, and then they'll let you take the jump. And then they will wash their hands of any responsibility. They are dangerous. They are coming for our democracy. They are coming for you, and they're coming for people like me. Trans people, queer people. We're the tip of the wedge this time round. Gay people are right behind us, shoulder to shoulder practically. If they take power again, and it's likely that they might, if you do not vote, we could be facing a genocide. They are already trying to criminalize medicine and healthcare for trans people. They're already trying to separate us legally. They are already inspiring stochastic terror against us. They are inspiring violence and hatred and bigotry. Do not give them an even bigger megaphone or legal power to enforce their radicalism. You don't have to like the Democratic Party. But I hope that you give a damn about trans people, about queer people, disabled people, people of color, the people who would be most affected by the authoritarian fascist regimes of the Republican Party if they were to take power. Because if they take power again, what? They've got the Supreme Court in their back pocket. They've got the Supreme Court, the highest law in the land. You think anything they do won't be deemed legal? They can't do anything illegal anymore. The judges are in their back pocket. So what? They suspend elections because election security is so important? So no more elections. It's just Trump. Maybe he doesn't run for just 4 years. Maybe he's like, no, I want a 3rd term or a 4th term. What are you going to do about it? Oh, what? You're gonna start a communist revolution in America? In capitalist America? With what fucking army? against you. The local police departments are so militarized that they could crush you. Not to mention the US military, which no doubt that the Republicans would unleash upon you the second they got the excuse. The second they got the excuse. We saw during Trump's regime, during his 4 years, that he would tear gas and brutalize protesters, and empower the police to do terrible things and attack the press. And that was when our democratic institutions were still mostly functioning, or at least not totally melted down in the nuclear reactor of fascism that is the current Republican Party. You don't have to like the Democrats, but we are facing a great evil right now. And they will do so much damage. They've already done a lot of damage, but they are setting the stage to do so much more. And we have to stop them. Is it fun? No, but it is 1 day's worth of work. Put in 1 day's worth of work. That is all I ask you. 1 day. Go vote 1 day. Maintain our democratic institutions for a little bit longer with 1 day's worth of work. Build mutual aid. Build dual power. Do activism. Every other day, set 1 day aside for voting. I'll quote Hayden Green here when he said that voting is like wiping your ass for hygiene. It is the bare minimum you could do. You should probably still do more, but it is the bare minimum you should do. With that long spiel, almost 12 minutes long, wow, I'll turn it over to my guest.
I thank you. I've obviously agreed with everything you said. I cannot stress the importance of getting out and voting tomorrow. If you haven't already, it doesn't even take that much time, and I understand that for a lot of people, they're not in a position to make it to voting facilities if you have to work or whatever the case may be. But if you can, please, 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 please do. And I did want to talk on a few points, though, that you made. You brought up how obviously that local police departments have the capability to, crush and just annihilate a pretty large group of citizens. But then you brought up the military. Do you think that if Republicans took over power, do you think that they would have access to the whole military? Because I served in the military. My husband serves in the military, and I distinctly remember a large portion of, it's not a monolith. So, do you think that, because I think that there is a good portion of the military that would, if that were the case, that wouldn't blindly follow those orders if Republicans got the power they so desperately strive for.
Absolutely. And maybe my tirade of doom and gloom got away from me a little bit there. Sure, I've read reports and I've read data that suggests that the military leans far more Democratic than it does Republican, or at least they're with the military's emphasis on being sworn to like the office of the presidency and not the president himself. That even I remember 2019 there was grumblings that Trump might try and use the military to like station them outside voting places to prevent voter fraud, and the military told him no, and said that they made it clear that the military would not have his back on that, that the military is not his personal police to use. And for that, that's pretty good. However, we have the police, which function as a occupying army in every single city, that can put down protesters, that are heavily armored, that have heavy weaponry, that have fucking tanks in some places, or heavily armored vehicles terminology. So while maybe, we wouldn't get the troops themselves and the military generals leading an anti-communist purge, we would see huge amounts of local police stepping in. In fact, one of the things I wanted to talk about today is we're seeing police stationed outside polling places quite a bit. Um, there was the news just broke yesterday or today, or at least I heard about it today, that sheriffs across the country, right wing, ultra conservative sheriffs, are patrolling drop boxes a lot more now, and intimidating voters. They are them, and as well as just fucking radical dudes with machine guns and pickup trucks are photographing election workers, photographing people who go to vote, following them, taking pictures of their license plates, and are standing outside drop boxes. Specifically, the police said exactly 75 feet, which is the legal limit, standing 76 feet away from the drop boxes with guns. That is, I think, pretty clear evidence of voter intimidation. So maybe the military isn't something we have to worry about. That has at least enough of a disconnect from the impulses of the presidency and the Republican Party that Trump might not be able to effectively turn the military on the U.S. citizens. But the police, however, have the inverse issue where they lean heavily Republican, heavily Trump, and have already shown a willingness in many cities across many states, and especially under the Trump regime with like Secret Service agents as well. They are willing to tear gas and rubber bullet shoot not just protesters, but the press as well. They're willing to beat them with riot shields and batons. They have little to no respect for the First Amendment. So
Ironic.
our ways to protest them would be curbed quickly. Because
Exactly. And
go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's I just don't understand how they can't how they continue to deny how fascist that looks. And I know that fascism has now become like this leftist buzzword, that they think we just throw around, but when you have to like measure 76 feet from these places of voting, and you feel the need to bring your gun there to try and intimidate, like, I mean, you're right, exactly right, what it is, intimidating voters. you know how do you convince yourself that you are on the right side of history? I don't understand it, and it is terrifying, honestly. I'm somebody that's kind of grown up around guns, so I think I've kind of been desensitized to them. But
Mm-hmm.
people that aren't necessarily don't have that background, I can understand how that would be really unnerving, because despite the fact that I have a background with firearms, there are some people out there that should not have guns. So I'll leave it at that. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's just,
Oh yeah,
it's really concerning.
to take a small sample, we've got Arizona election workers have received hundreds of violent threats and intimidating communications in the run up to Tuesday's midterm elections, most of them based on election conspiracy theories promoted by former President Donald Trump and his allies. And that's Maricopa County. I hope I pronounced that right.
Yep.
Um, yeah, the threats include things like "you will all be executed" or "wire around their limbs and tied and dragged by a car," wrote another. Not good. And it's all fueled by the election conspiracy theories. Because, and this is one of the things that fascism hits on quite a bit, is fascism doesn't come selling like authoritarianism and like repression. They sell safety and security, and tradition. So they're smuggling all the worst stuff under that guise, So they're They're not going to say that, like, we're taking away your freedom of speech. Instead, they're just going to say there's violent protesters, therefore we're cracking down on the violent protesters. And then anytime that there is a protest, they're just going to declare that protest a violent one, or at least as long as it's a left-wing one. Right-wing protests are endorsed until they turn violent, and then they're being like, okay, well, we don't endorse the violence yet, but ha ha ha, it's pretty funny, right? Um,
Yeah. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene, like I've had a perfect example of this, and it's not really pertinent to like
mhm.
this, but as far as she proposed a bill, I can't remember what she named it, but it was named something so innocuous. So it was like um protecting child's innocence or something like that, and it's basically just detransitioning all trans children. And
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
oh, you vote against this, you're voting against child innocence, you don't support child's innocence, and it's like they word it in a way that makes you sound like the bad guy when they're trying to force all trans children to detransition. And it's like they know how to word it, they play the word game really well. So you're absolutely right in the fact that
Hmm.
they hide all of the bad stuff under this guise of like, well, we're just trying to protect children.
Yeah,
No, you're
absolutely.
not. No, you're not.
They're selling the entire, like, anti-trans movement, and that's why I said earlier that we are on the verge of a genocide of trans people. They're already trying to make it illegal to get any medicine or transition. You know, they fully know and understand that trans kids who are not able to seek the medical approved care from their doctor have higher rates of suicide. They fully understand that they are inflicting suffering and pain on that child. They don't care for the actual care of the child. This is just the same scenario as, like, when they say they're pro-life, but then they are
Exactly.
cruel and unusual to every aspect of life beyond the point of conception. You know,
Exactly.
they don't want to give mothers time off to work. They don't want to make sure that the kid
Provide
gets
health
good
care.
education. They don't want to get have you have good health care or a pension plan when you grow old. They're anti-life at every single other step of the process, except for the one narrow band that allows them to punish women for having sex. Suddenly then they care about life. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
It's the same thing with trans people. We are deemed deviant, we are deemed other, therefore we are a problem, we are a threat. Therefore they will slam, I'm going to close the window. They are going to violently react to anything that is trans. You know, you have people, kids just trying to be themselves, express themselves. They try and sell that as sexualization and pedophilia because they dimly understand that pedophilia is bad, not when they do it, when they defend child brides, but instead um, because they understand that we don't like pedophilia.
Mhm.
Therefore, they can
And it
use it as a
works.
cudgel against us to be like, ah, you say you're against pedophilia, but this thing that is not pedophilia, but I call pedophilia, therefore it's bad.
Yeah, it seems like there's been this uptick in violence towards anything associated with the LGBTQ plus community. Like a lot of places do, like the children's readings where they read books to children. And a lot of times they'll do it in like drag because drag is cool. Like we
Yeah,
all love
it's
drag,
brightly
and
colored
it's like,
costumes.
oh my God, they will like they will bring guns, they will throw, like there was someone throwing a Molotov cocktail in
Mm-hmm.
there because someone
Recently,
wearing makeup and yeah, like
the guy who was behind the uptick in, like, CRT discourse, the guy who, like, campaigned on it,
mhm,
he recently came out and he said we should start, or he said that Republicans should change their language from drag queen to trans stripper because there's worse connotations surrounding the word stripper than there is drag queen.
mm.
They're
I mean that's
they
true.
don't have principles. They are just cruel. I've said this before and I'll say it again. Republicans are just evil. Cruelty is the point. That is the goal. You know, a lot of liberals that I argue with, they're like, "Oh, we got to work across the aisle." We care about the same things. We just come at it from a different perspective. No, no.
You know,
Republicans are just cruel. They are just evil. You can do any sort of sociological analysis to see why they ended up that way. It can be an interesting thought experiment or research paper to find out why did the Nazis participate in the Nazi activities. However, that doesn't make him any less dangerous. That doesn't make him any less of a threat. Just because Trump is absurdly, cartoonishly stupid and stumbles over himself at every opportunity, that doesn't make him any less dangerous. That doesn't make him any less of a threat. That doesn't make him any less powerful, and that doesn't mean he wields that power any kinder against us. Just because he's occasionally incompetent and unable to fully perform a coup on the first attempt doesn't mean he won't try again, and doesn't mean that second attempt won't be successful.
absolutely, yeah.
I had a video of mine taken down just yesterday because I made a video on TikTok and on YouTube talking about how I think everyone who has spread the election conspiracy theories to this day, even though it's been fully proven that the election was secure and that there was no stolen election and there was no voter fraud, any elected official who continues to peddle that information should be jailed for sedition. I'm not talking one, I'm not talking 2, 3, nor 4. I'm not even talking a dozen or 2 dozen. I'm talking by the hundreds. They need to be rounded up. Every single Republican who voted to not certify the election of the results in 2020 should be kicked out of office, expelled from Congress, and never allowed to serve again. You voted against democracy, therefore you are removed from that democracy. You no longer get a say in that democracy. Fuck you. That is my position. If I was president, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be rounding them up. No questions asked. I will give a press briefing after you are all in a box.
I'd have to add, ignorant to that list of, attributes to Republicans, because you could show them all this evidence. You could show them the fact that there was, some like discrepancies with ballots, but like not nearly on a wide scale level. And in fact, I think there were more fraud for Trump than there was for Biden. But I mean, in a country this big, that's going to happen. That's pretty typical. You can show them this evidence. You can show them everything, and they won't accept it because it doesn't fit their belief, because they develop their belief before they have evidence, and they find evidence to like confirm that, basically confirmation bias. And they can't understand that people are out there that have formulated their beliefs based on the evidence that they looked at. Like I grew up right leaning, I swallowed all like the red pill for a really long time, but then it wasn't until I was just bombarded with contradicting information that I'm like, I had to be like, well, maybe I was wrong. So that's where that difference is where they will reject any kind of evidence if it doesn't align with what they believe in. And we've seen that before in some characters. So
yeah, the ignorance is a really big thing, not just for the politicians, because I have zero sympathy or leeway for the politicians. They have the power, they have the means to know anything that they want to know if they choose not to. However, the voters don't really seem to understand how the elections work and how, why our voting system is so secure. We vote on physical paper, which makes it extremely hard. If you're voting, with a computer, you could go into a little app and you could change a number. You could just hack into that, change a number. That's fine. But voting with physical paper means that you'd have to physically change each one of those papers, and each paper then is a piece of evidence that could be used against you. People seem to think that, voter fraud happens when a guy walks up to the mailbox with his sweater just stuffed with a bunch of ballots with his name on it, and it all gets put through. But no, Our voting system is so secure that if you voted on Tuesday, died on Wednesday, and your vote was read on Thursday, it would be rejected because your death certificate would come up when they correspond each name to whoever voted. That's how it works.
Yeah. But
It is
if they
extremely
just don't
hard to
understand,
do voter fraud, and it comes at an extreme cost in this country. It just doesn't happen on a wide scale. Sure, you'll see small ballots, a couple dozen here, couple dozen there, all across the country. But it's extremely small scale and never enough to really tip any significant race.
and a lot of them are like they're not even like maliciously they were intended to be fraud. It's like usually a clerical error or I remember I was doing some research because I was in a back and forth with somebody about it. It was there were people that were incarcerated that were told they could vote and then they voted and then I guess it came back that like, oh, you're actually not allowed to vote. So it's like they just were doing what they were told to do and it came back on them.
That
So
issue right now.
yeah, I think it was in Florida actually, and it was
Yeah.
like I want to say 10 or something. Actually, no, I think it was 5 people, and they all voted for Biden. And I was going back and forth with the person, and I'm like, okay, well, here's a few hundred that were fake for Trump, but only 5, and they were like, well, fraud's fraud. I'm like, okay, you're not looking
We're
for
talking scale here, bud.
Yeah, okay, but yeah, so
yeah, absolutely.
But
today is going to be a bit of a shorter show, so I am going to give my guest here an opportunity to give their closing thoughts and statements, and then I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. Today's been a real busy day. It's been a real busy week, so 30-minute show this week instead of the hour-long one. We will be hopefully back to our regular broadcasting schedule next week. With that said, Astro, give us your ending.
Vote, vote, vote. Get out and vote. Please, just do it. Just please, we don't need another 4 years of what we just went through. If you can, please vote. I'm Astr0feminist. You can catch me on TikTok, talking shit on the patriarchy, and you can join in. And that's all I'm going to say.
All right. As I said at the beginning in my opening monologue, it's 1 day's worth of work. You don't have to like the Democratic Party, but you have to hate the Republican Party for the cruelty on unimaginable scale that they will inflict should they gain power. And yeah, we don't like the Democratic Party a whole bunch, but some of them are pretty good. We got some progressives in there. You've got Mary Patola up in Alaska. You've got Bernie Sanders, who's still in there. You've got Elizabeth Warren. You've got the entire squad from AOC to Rashid Lateef and Ilhan Omar. You've got a growing number of progressives who've joined the Democratic Party and are moving it left and have a huge amount of influence despite their small size. We do not have time to build an entire new third party to challenge the two-party system. We don't have time. We have to be practical and pragmatic about this. We vote Democrat because they're not fascist. That is the choice that we have to make. 1 day is a worth of work. Choose wisely, be pragmatic, and remember that if you choose to abstain, that was one less vote of support you could have given to trans people, to gay people, to queer people, to trans kids who are suffering right now. Republicans want to kill us. Democrats don't want to kill us. That is the dichotomy we are dealing with. Choose wisely. Join us next week when we talk about some new shit. Follow my guest, subscribe for more, support us on Patreon, and with that, y'all have a good evening.